Hey everybody, we're Matt and Cheryl with We're in the Rockies, and in this video we want to cover 11 great things to do at Jacob Lake, Arizona. So if you're headed to the north rim of the Grand Canyon, you will drive through Jacob Lake. There is no way to get there without going through Jacob Lake. It's the gateway to the Grand Canyon's north rim. Okay, so the number one thing to do there is, as I mentioned, visit the north rim of the Grand Canyon. I thought the north rim of the Grand Canyon was awesome. It's way less crowded than the south rim. It's beautiful weather during the summer. It's nice and cool. You have some beautiful views right there. You can go into the Grand Canyon Lodge, which is right on the edge of the canyon. It is literally perched on the edge there, with some amazing views. You can just sit in the Adirondack chairs and relax.
I thought the lodge was beautiful, and I just loved the vibe of it. People were just out relaxing, having a drink, and just taking in the views. Number 2, get cookies and shakes from Jacob's Lake Inn. You know, a lot of a vacation is the good food you get to eat, and I have to say that looks are a little deceiving on the outside of Jacob's Lake Inn. It looks kind of like a gas station, but when you go in there, you will be pleasantly surprised with the amazing shakes and cookies. They probably have about 12 different varieties of cookies, and our very favorite was the lemon zucchini. Very good, but if you're a chocolate lover, don't worry, there's plenty of chocolate there. And then their shakes are amazing. They're yummy fruit shakes. And just a word to the wise, share, because their shakes are not this big, they're this big.
Okay, number 3 is to climb the fire tower. So there are actually 3 fire towers that I'm aware of in this region on the North Rim. And of course they use them to look out and spot forest fires before they get out of control. The whole area, in case you're unaware, is very high elevation. In fact, it's over 8,000 feet above sea level, which is higher than the South Rim even. And it's very forested, dense area there. They have problems with forest fires, so they built these towers way back in the 1930s. But as you're driving from Jacob Lake into the Grand Canyon, or as you're leaving Jacob Lake, it's about a mile south of Jacob Lake, there's just a little fire tower on your left-hand side, and you can actually go walk up to the top of that fire tower.
Which I did. You gotta be a little brave. It's a little rickety, but amazing views up there, and it just is incredible to me how the whole system in place to fight these forest fires. If you ever get a chance to go to a smoke jumpers museum, the guys that parachute out of planes and fight these fires before they turn into big things, you really ought to do it. It's incredible.
While we're talking about that, this area has seen some pretty nasty forest fires in recent memory. So the Mangum fire happened in 2019, and so as you drive in and out of Jacob Lake, you'll see a lot of burned trees. In fact, when we were there this year camping, we camped at Jacob Lake, they kicked us out because the area was so dry and they were concerned that there was going to be another forest fire this year, so they bumped us out.
Yeah, it was kind of an evacuation. They were, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that was a major, that Mangum fire a couple years ago was a major fire and still is fresh in their memory. So fire's a big deal here in this very dry part of the country.
Number 4, you've got to smell the ponderosa pines. They are everywhere along the North Rim, and you know, normally smelling trees is not part of our vacation plans, but you have to make an exception at the Grand Canyon and Jacob Lake, because these ponderosa pines smell just like vanilla and butterscotch, and it's really a unique thing to experience. So make sure to, instead of smelling the roses, smell the ponderosa pines.
Okay, number 5 is visit the KANAB Plateau Visitor Center. This is just a little building that's right next to the Jacob Lake Inn, and it's run by the Forest Service, I believe, and so they have some little displays in there that you can go look at. They have a little monument to Teddy Roosevelt, and then another monument to the KANAB squirrel. The town is very proud of the KANAB squirrel. It is the only area in the world that the KANAB squirrel lives, and we didn't see it when we were there, but it looks pretty cool actually.
Well, and I was gonna say, it's funny when you travel, you go to these certain places and every place kind of has their theme. When we visited Cody, Wyoming this summer, all they could talk about was the bar that the Queen gave Buffalo Bill Cody. I mean, it was just, that was every place we went, we heard all about the bar. Well, when you go to the North Rim and Jacob Lake, you hear about that KANAB squirrel. They're very proud of their KANAB squirrel.
Right.
All right, number 6. This is kind of a knot, but don't go to Jacob's Lake. When we got there, I was really kind of disappointed because I'm looking around and I'm like, Matt, where's the lake? Well, Jacob's Lake actually dried up years ago, and so it's a little town called Jacob's Lake, but there's no lake to be found there. And so I guess if you're going to Jacob Lake, just lower your expectations that you're not going to be doing any swimming.
The funny thing about the town is named after a guy named Jacob Hamblin, who was a Mormon / mountain man / missionary in southern Utah, and he ended up becoming friends with the Paiute Indians. They named this lake after him, Jacob Lake, but he never lived in the area. He actually didn't settle Jacob Lake. So it's named Jacob Lake after a guy who didn't settle it, and after a lake which is not there. So it's kind of funny. So number 7 is Vermillion Cliffs. This is a national monument, Vermillion Cliffs National Monument. It is located about an hour or more away from Jacob Lake, so it depends on which side of Vermillion Cliffs you're driving to. Now, on the south side of Vermillion Cliffs, there's a couple of spots there that have some interesting stuff, but one of them is you can look at the California condor birds. This is a place where they capture the birds and release the birds. These are endangered animals. These are the largest birds in North America. They're very endangered. At one point they were down to like 20 condors. Now they're up over 500, but they still are. They monitor every single one of them, and they put a number on their wings, every single one of them. So they're often flying around in the area, so that's kind of cool. If you drive around to the north side of Vermillion Cliffs, that's where there's some pretty famous hikes like Coyote Gulch and the Wave and stuff like that. But even just on the south side, there's kind of some cool stuff there at Vermillion Cliffs. This is some of the most remote and rugged terrain in the entire United States. It was some of the very last area that was explored by the United States, and it really is very sparse, and you have to drive a long ways to get around in this part of the country.
Oh, but it is so cool. I think so often people will come out to visit these places and be a little disappointed that there's crowds where they're at. But if you go to the Vermillion Cliffs area, you're going to get kind of your ideal, because you are driving through some pretty desolate but very, very scenic rock formations. And like Matt mentioned, getting to maybe see a California condor, which leads me into our number 7, which is to walk across the Navajo Bridge. The Navajo Bridge you can drive across or walk across, and it goes right over the Colorado River, which is pretty wide. And it was one of my most memorable experiences at the Grand Canyon when we last visited, because we did get to see those California condors. There were about 4 or 5 of them that were just kind of hanging out underneath the bridge and gliding between the bridge and the rocks near the Colorado. And it was quite a warm day. I remember being pretty sweaty and hot on the bridge, and then after we got done looking at the condors, we drove down to the Colorado River, and it was really cool to actually be able to dip our toes in the Colorado River, because we'd been looking at it for a few days at the Grand Canyon. But something that really surprised me about that Colorado River was how cold it was. The air was almost 110 degrees, but the river was in the 40s. It was quite the contrast. I mean, it was good that you could hop in and then hop out and dry right off. But it was really a fun experience to go see that Colorado River on the Navajo Bridge.
Mm-hmm. So that's actually our next thing. Is number 9 is Lee's Ferry. So Navajo Bridge and Lee's Ferry are right by each other, and you have to cross over Navajo Bridge to get across the Grand Canyon in that part of the country, basically. Either that or Glen Canyon Dam, actually, which, by the way, that's where all the water comes out of, Glen Canyon Dam, and it's coming out of the bottom of the dam, and that's why the water is so cold there at Lee's Ferry. But just down the road from Navajo Bridge is Lee's Ferry. So this is one of the very, very few places that you can actually drive down to the Colorado River, and you can swim, you can raft. They have half-day rafting trips from Lee's Ferry around Horseshoe Bend, and then they have multi-day, even multi-week rafting trips from Lee's Ferry all the way through the Grand Canyon. So Lee's Ferry is kind of the launching point there for a lot of rafting trips. But you can boat, you can kayak, you can swim, all that at Lee's Ferry. They have some old historic buildings there, because this was really the first, or one of the first crossings in this part of the country to get from one side of the Grand Canyon to the other. And so they have some little old buildings there that are kind of interesting. You can go on some hikes around there as well. And then we found some really cool red rock formations near Lee's Ferry that we just pulled off to the side of the road, and you got to go play on the red rocks and climb around, and we played Where's Waldo and with our kids, real life Where's Waldo, and had them run out there and hide, and we tried to find them. So that was just a delightful surprise, Lee's Ferry and Navajo Bridge.
Yes, had lower expectations for that, but it ended up being really memorable. Okay, So before I move on to number 10, I wanted to encourage you to watch another videos of ours after this one's done, just all about visiting the north rim of the Grand Canyon, because that's going to give you some really good details for planning your trip. But now, moving on to number 10 is visit KANAB, Utah. Now, Matt and I we're native Utahns. We were born and raised here. And I have to say that I used to kind of poo-poo KANAB. I thought in my mind that it was the sticks and there was nothing worth seeing out there. But I have to tell you that I was wrong. There's a lot of cool things to see in KANAB. And one of them is for all of you animals out there. It's called the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, and their whole goal is to have 0 euthanizations of the animals. They help any animals that are blind or animals that don't have legs. They'll either take care of them there at the ranch, or they will try to find homes for them. And it really is incredible to see how passionate the employees are in caring for these animals, and really quite a treat. People plan their whole trip around Best Friends Animal Sanctuary sometimes.
Dogs, cats, horses,
pigs.
They have just about anything there, and then people go there to volunteer too, right? They'll like go there for a week.
That's their vacation is they stay there and then they'll pet the cats with lupus, or I mean they really.
And they have a vegetarian restaurant there.
Yeah, so I mean if that's your jam, check it out.
This is not just some sort of little building. This is a major complex spread across acres of red rock, different layers in a canyon. I mean, it's just visiting it is actually quite an experience, and they'll give you a free tour. They'll give you a free tour if you go visit.
Yes. Also near KANAB are some pretty incredible hikes, like Matt mentioned, Coyote Gulch, the Wave. You have to get in a lottery for that, but some awesome hiking.
They also have Moki Cave, which is just a little sand cave that you can climb around in. There's actually Moki Cave and Moki Caverns. Covered that in another video, but these are 2 places right next to each other. One's a museum, one's just a cave you can kind of climb around in. And then the little and then KANAB has a little museum there called the Little Hollywood Museum. So KANAB used to be called Little Hollywood because there were so many westerns shot in and around KANAB. There were over 100 western movies shot here kind of during the early days of, well, all the way from the 20s up to the 60s and all that. Probably still some today. But anyway, they have a little museum there where they've rescued some of the movie sets from some of those movies. And so you can visit those. They have the movie set for The Outlaw, Josie Wales, Clint Eastwood movie, famous Clint Eastwood movie. So, anything else to add on KANAB?
No, just that you know, when you visit the Grand Canyon, you always think about just looking into the canyon and seeing those views. But if you're spending more than a day there, you really need some kind of activities. And there's lots of activities in the area. And KANAB would be a great place to stay if you're in between Bryce and the Grand Canyon. If you're needing a minute to cool your heels and just have a minute to do an activity.
I think it's funny there. KANAB's advertising slogan is abracadabra. And so there are many things to do, many hikes, and it's an outdoor mecca right around KANAB, Utah. It's crazy. Okay, and then number 11 is Pipe Spring National Monument. So if you're a parkie, if you're somebody who likes to check off all those national parks, this is another one that you can do if you're in the area. Actually, I'm not sure if it's in Utah or Arizona, but KANAB is in Utah, so we're right on the border here. So this whole area, Jacob Lake and that whole area, is in a place called the Arizona Strip, which is interesting. It's cut off completely from the rest of the state of Arizona. It's in Arizona, but the Grand Canyon separates it entirely. So those people are actually more connected to Utah, towns like KANAB and St. George, Utah. That's much easier for them to get to those places than all the way around the canyon and over Navajo Bridge and down into Arizona. So it's kind of an interesting little spot, I think. And in there is a place called Pipe Springs National Monument, which is a place that Native Americans and Mormons used to get water. There's a spring of water coming up there. And so what you can do is learn some history there about the local area and about kind of the intermixture here of the Native Americans and the Mormons being in that area. Also, it has Texas Longhorns, which is pretty cool. They have like a working farm there and an orchard and stuff, and then you can climb up some hillsides there and you get great views of that whole Arizona Strip, that whole surrounding area. So it's actually kind of a cool little stop. You you wouldn't really think too much of it, but all these national park sites really have something to offer for sure.
All right, so if you were traveling out to the Grand Canyon or Zion or Bryce or anywhere out in our neck of the woods, we have prepared several guides that would just hold your hand and take you to the sites we would tell all of our best friends and family to go visit. Plus, we also include in our guides an audio tour, some of the best stories to get you familiar with the area and really make your trip special. So check it out at we'reintherockies.com.
We have over an hour and a half worth of audio information about the North Rim in the audio guide, and then we tell you all the best places to go and check out.
Hey, thanks for watching.